Have you ever realized that you are destroying your life with the words you repeat daily? Not by major decisions or sudden tragedies, but simply by a few sentences you throw out casually. Many men don't need an enemy to bring them down. They do it themselves with their own words. These phrases may sound assertive, confident, or even bold, but in reality, they are nothing more than a thin veil hiding weakness, fear, and laziness. Behind every phrase lies a painful truth that man has stopped growing, stopped changing, and begun to stand still. The most dangerous part is that they don't see it. They think they are wise, they think they are tough, they believe they are proving their strength. But if you look closely, you will see one clear thing. The phrases they repeat are not just reflections of their mind, but signs of self-destruction. Words are like cracks in the inner fortress. Small, hard to notice, but if left unrepaired, they spread, and the whole wall collapses in silence. Seneca once warned, "Speech is the mirror of the mind. What you say is never meaningless. It reveals how you think and react, eventually shaping your life." When excuses and ego rule words, your life will be governed by stagnation and failure. But when words reflect awareness, discipline, and self-control, they become a sharp weapon that lifts you to a higher ground. How often have you caught yourself saying things like, "That's just the way I am," or "That's not my fault"? How frequently have you used those words to justify and avoid facing the truth? You are not just missing a chance to change every time you do. You are cutting off a piece of your strength. And the most frightening part is this. Over time, you begin to believe in those weak words yourself. If these words strike you, pause for a moment. This is not a video meant to comfort you. This is a slap of awakening. Because the world does not need more men living on excuses. The world needs men who know how to stay silent when silence is required, but when they speak, every word carries weight. And I want you to remember that you are not alone in this journey. Millions of other men are also stuck between the words of self-destruction and the hunger to change. If you want to build a fortress within, if you're going to eliminate the words that secretly eat away at your strength, then hit subscribe and walk with me. Here we don't just talk about philosophy. We turn philosophy into a living tool, step by step, day by day. In this video, I will reveal 6 foolish phrases that men often repeat. 6 red flags and speech words that seem harmless, but slowly corrode your discipline, your dignity, and your inner strength. But more importantly, I will show you how a Stoic man who knows how to govern himself would replace those phrases with awareness and action. If you genuinely want to escape the cycle of words killing your strength, hit subscribe to Sovereign Stoic. Because here we don't preach theory, we turn Stoicism into a living practice so that each day you step closer to the strongest and freest version of yourself. Don't watch the next part to stay safe inside the circle of excuses, because the very first phrase we are about to expose may sound harmless, but in truth, it is a death sentence for growth. And that phrase is, "That's just the way I am." Phrase 1, "That's just the way I am." Perhaps you have heard or said, "That's just how I am." At first, it may sound harmless, even like a statement of identity, a confidence in who you are. But deep inside, this is not the voice of strength. It is a sentence, a death sentence for growth. Why? Because when you say, "That's just the way I am," you place a period at the end of change. You are convincing yourself that your character habits or limitations are permanent, untouchable, and unchangeable. But the truth is, a human being is not a stone. We are clay. We are either worn down by old habits or shape ourselves into something new every day. Picture a man in his 40s sitting in a small cafe on a gray morning. When someone asks why he has never learned a new skill, he smiles and shrugs. "That's just how I am. I'm not made for change." It sounds ordinary, but at that very moment, he locked the door on every opportunity. His career will stall, his relationships will grow cold, and his soul will slowly wither. Not because of fate, but because of the words that just left his mouth. I once read the story of Carl, a retired Navy veteran. He was the type of man who dressed sharply, carried himself with authority, and radiated confidence wherever he went. But inside, Carl had stopped growing years ago. Every time his wife asked for more listening, more sharing, the answer was always the same. "That's just the kind of man I am." Whenever his son wanted to talk about emotional wounds, Carl brushed it off. "I don't do that. I can't change." Over time, his wife quietly packed her things, his son called less often, and the once warm home grew hauntingly silent. Carl did not lose his family in one big argument. He lost them little by little through the phrase he trusted the most, "That's just the way I am." The issue here is not honesty. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. The problem is surrender. This phrase is a free ticket out of responsibility. It allows you to reject effort, deny the possibility of change, and ultimately choose comfort over growth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." When you say, "That's just the way I am," you are doing the opposite, denying that very power. You are locking yourself in a small box, stamping it with the label unchangeable, and choosing to live there forever. The truth is, no one is born complete. A Stoic man understands that character is not a prison, but a construction site. Every day is a chance to repair, add bricks, replace beams, and reinforce the foundation. You don't need to become someone else, but can always become a stronger version of yourself. Look at modern life. How many people are trapped inside this phrase? An office worker refuses to learn new skills because he thinks he's not a tech person. A husband lets distance in marriage grow because he believes, "I'm just naturally cold." A father never says "I love you" to his child because he thinks that's just how men are. Every phrase, every excuse is like a brick building the wall that separates them from the things that matter most. Epictetus once taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When you cling to "that's just the way I am," you are not mastering yourself. You are letting your past habits and laziness imprison you. Instead of living, you are just replaying. So how do you break free? Start with a simple replacement. Every time "that's just the way I am" rises in your mind, cut it off with another phrase, "I can become better." This shift may sound small, but it opens a new door. It doesn't deny who you are today, but affirms that you still have room to grow. Try writing down one habit you want to change. Just one. It could be procrastination, your temper, or your lack of exercise. Then commit to yourself you will act differently for the next 7 days, even just a little. Each day, do one small thing that goes against the old habit. On the 7th day, look back and ask yourself, am I truly chained to the past, or have I just proven that I can change? And never forget, Seneca once reminded us, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. That means no age is too late, no habit is permanent. The only question is, do you have the courage to replace the old phrase with a new declaration? And once you begin to do this, you will see one truth clearly: strength is not in stubbornly staying the same, but in daring to change. The Stoic man does not say, "That's just how I am." He says, "I am training myself to improve daily." But there is another layer of weakness. Some men do not just imprison themselves with old habits. They also bind themselves with silence. They believe that a real man never speaks about feelings. And that is the following foolish phrase, just as dangerous. Phrase 2. Real men don't talk about feelings. After seeing the danger of hiding behind the phrase, "That's just the way I am," we must go one level deeper. How men often conceal their inner world. One of the phrases passed down from generation to generation, sounding like a badge of strength, but in reality, planting the seeds of loneliness and pain, is this: real men don't talk about feelings. At first, this sounds like a medal pinned to the chest. It conjures up the image of a tough man, unbreakable, holding back tears even in pain. But beneath the surface, this is not proof of strength. It is a sign of fear. Fear of exposure, fear of being judged, fear of being seen as weak. And out of fear, many men choose silence. They stay silent, they suppress, and eventually the silence becomes a burden. It piles into an invisible pressure like a stone hanging in their chest. Many men reach their 40s and 50s with calm faces, but each night behind closed doors they feel drained, exhausted, and no one knows. Why? Because they have worn the armor of "real men don't talk about feelings" for too long. Think of Carl, a man his friends saw as the picture of masculinity. He rarely showed emotion and always kept a stern appearance. But inside, Carl was so lonely he cried quietly at night, knees curled like a child. He never dared to tell his wife he feared growing old. He never told his son he regretted missing precious moments. And that silence slowly became a distance that could not be bridged. His family did not break apart over one big fight. It collapsed over the years of his hiding the truth about his heart. This is not just a personal story. Research from the American Psychological Association, APA, shows that men who hide their emotions are at higher risk of depression, heart disease, and even early death. Silence does not save anyone. Silence drags you into a pit day after day. The phrase, "real men don't talk about feelings," is not proof of toughness. It is a prison. Okay. The sad part is that many confuse Stoicism with emotional suppression. They think Stoicism means never crying, never being sad, never admitting fear. But that is a deadly misunderstanding. Stoicism never taught people to deny emotions. On the contrary, it teaches you to observe, analyze, and master them. Marcus Aurelius, the greatest emperor of Rome, wrote in his Meditations about the pain of losing the wife he loved. He did not deny that pain. He faced it and wrote about it. From that, he found the calm to continue ruling the empire. If even an emperor could acknowledge his emotions in his private journal, why should a modern man think he is stronger by burying everything? Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That teaching does not call for denying emotions, but knowing how to handle them. Responding with stillness does not mean staying silent forever. It means you observe, name the feeling, and then decide the response instead of letting the feeling ride you like a wild horse. A Stoic man does not fear emotions. He fears being unconsciously controlled by them. And to avoid that, he dares to look them in the eye. He writes down his worries in a notebook or shares calmly with someone he trusts. That is not a weakness. That is a form of mental discipline. Try a simple practice. Spend 5 minutes writing down 3 things you felt during the day every night. They don't need to be big. It could be irritation from traffic, joy from your child's laughter, or sadness because a friend forgot to call. When you name a feeling, you take back control. You turn the invisible into the visible. From there, you can deal with it with awareness. The truth is, the men who choose silence are often the most imprisoned by their emotions. They think they don't need to speak, but their silence is speaking for them. It whispers every night, "You're not strong enough to admit the truth." And so they live their whole lives with a gap that never gets filled. Stoicism never asks you to live like a stone statue. It asks you to live like a real human, observing your soul without letting it become chained. A real man does not hide his heart, but is disciplined enough to open it, look at it, and not let it blindly drive his life. So next time you are about to say, "Real men don't talk about feelings," stop. Ask yourself, is this phrase protecting me or burying me alive? If you choose awareness, replace it with another phrase. I am strong enough to admit my feelings, but I will not let them control me. You'll notice a strange change as you get used to this phrase. You no longer feel as heavy. Your anger no longer explodes out of nowhere. Loneliness becomes less frightening, and your relationships start to feel warmer again because you are no longer a cold wall, but a man who can genuinely connect. The world does not need more silent men who collapse in the dark. The world needs men who face themselves, observe their emotions, and train not to be ruled by them. And when you do that, you will no longer be a victim of your heart. You will be its master. But there is another danger. When they stop hiding feelings, many men run to a new excuse. They blame others. They say, "It's not my fault." And that is the following foolish phrase we must expose. Phrase 3, "It's not my fault." On the path of self-destruction, few phrases are as dangerous as "it's not my fault." It sounds simple, like a reflex of self-defense, but in truth it is a slow drip of poison day after day, paralyzing a man's ability to grow. Pay attention. Those who often say, "It's not my fault," believe they are escaping guilt, protecting their pride. But in reality, they are cutting off their own hand from the steering wheel of their life. Whenever you blame circumstances, other people, or society, you hand the keys of your life to an outside force. From that moment on, you are no longer the driver. You are just a passenger in the back seat. Oscar is a clear example. He once dreamed of starting his own business, of building a company. But each time he failed, Oscar always had a reason. Ready, the market was too harsh. Competitors played dirty, the government didn't support him. Every time he reinforced the belief that it wasn't his fault. He thought it lifted the burden, but he was actually abandoning ownership. He didn't realize that blaming was the same as signing a blank check and letting fate decide everything. And as a result, Oscar spent years in repeated failures, both bitter and powerless. Only when he began writing in a small notebook did things change. Instead of writing, "It's not my fault," Oscar added another line, "but now it is my responsibility." That one sentence flipped his entire mindset. He was no longer standing outside looking at failure. He stepped in and claimed it as his own battle. And when he dared to take responsibility, he regained the strength to act. His work gradually stabilized his confidence, returned, and Oscar proved one thing: you cannot change anything unless you first accept it as yours. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you repeat, "It's not my fault," you choose to see yourself as a victim. You turn the event into shackles, but when you say, "This is my responsibility," you turn the event into a stepping stone. The difference lies in your attitude, which decides whether you live like a warrior or a victim. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." A Stoic man understands that not every misfortune is his fault, but every reaction, every action that follows is his choice. And when he owns the choice, he owns the shaping of destiny. In daily life, you'll meet many men with the mindset of blaming. The husband who neglects his family excuses himself. "My friends dragged me out. It's not my fault." The father who fails to teach his children, insisting that's the school's job. The employee who didn't complete his work that said, "The boss wasn't clear." Behind every excuse is one more step back from responsibility, and each step back accumulates until they become only a shadow of themselves. Now compare that with a Stoic man. He may face bitter failures, he may suffer unfair losses, but he doesn't waste time pointing fingers outward. He turns inward and asks, "What can I control right now? What can I do in this moment?" That question keeps him standing even when the world around him collapses. If you want to change the habit of blaming, try a simple practice. Next time something goes wrong and "it's not my fault" is about to leave your lips, take a deep breath, then replace it with, "Now it's my responsibility." Write it down if you need to. When you do this, you'll feel the difference instantly. Instead of feeling small, you'll feel in control. Instead of being dragged down, you'll feel you can move forward. Seneca once said, "No gem can be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." When you blame, you reject the trial, rejecting the chance to shine brighter. When you take responsibility, you allow adversity to become the hand that polishes you, shaping you into something more substantial. The world is full of men who have already died in their minds because they grew used to blaming. They live for many more years, but their soul have already withered. Do not let yourself become one of them. You cannot control what others do, but you can always control how you respond. Don't waste another day living as a victim. Be the master of your own life. And if you think blaming is just a small thing, look at the long-term cost. Blame once and you lose one chance to learn. Blame 10 times and you lose an entire path of growth. Blame for a lifetime and you lose your very self. From now on, remember, strength is not in avoiding blame, but in carrying it. A Stoic man does not fear the phrase, "I take responsibility." He wields it like a sword, cutting through every chain. And when you begin to live this way, you'll notice a fundamental change. Instead of feeling wronged, you will feel free. Instead of being bound, you will feel in control. But there is another phrase that sounds nobler, yet is just as dangerous. It is when a man keeps repeating, "I deserve more than this." And that will be the next trap we must expose. Phrase 4, "I deserve more than this." The phrase, "I deserve more than this," doesn't sound wrong. It rings like a declaration of self-respect, a slogan to motivate oneself. But if you look closely, this is often not a strength. This is complacency, laziness dressed in pride. Because most of the men who keep saying this rarely do anything to prove they truly deserve more. You will see this everywhere. An employee who works half-heartedly but always complains, "I deserve a raise." A man who ignores his responsibilities in marriage but mutters, "I deserve a better wife." A young man who never trains his body, never reads a book, yet says, "I deserve a big opportunity." They want the reward without paying the price. They want the throne without building the castle. The problem here is confusion. They confuse desire with entitlement. They think wanting is enough. But in Stoic philosophy, life owes you nothing. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not waste time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That sentence cuts through every complaint like a blade. It reminds us that you don't deserve anything beyond what you have become through your own actions and discipline. Picture a man named David. David often complained that he deserved a better job. Every evening after work, he sat watching TV, scrolling on his phone, and venting to his friends. "My company doesn't appreciate me." But when the chance for promotion came, he lacked the skills, the knowledge, and the discipline. His colleagues, the ones who had quietly studied late, taken on challenging tasks, were called up. David stayed in the same old office, this time more bitter, repeating even louder, "I deserve more than this." But he didn't realize that the phrase was blinding him. It made him believe he was a victim, left behind, instead of seeing the truth that he had not done enough to step up to the next level. Epictetus once emphasized, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you must do." This is the antidote to the toxic phrase, "I deserve more than this," because it reminds us that no one hands you value. You must forge it yourself, prove it yourself through concrete action. In life, men who fall into this trap often become bitter. They look around and see others succeed, then quickly conclude that it was luck or privilege. They don't see the nights those people stayed up studying, the mornings they trained, the silent sacrifices they made. Instead of looking in the mirror and asking, "Who must I become to be worthy?" they choose to shout, "I deserve more." But a Stoic man never falls into that trap. He does not delude himself with the phrase, "I deserve." He only asks, "Am I training to become the man I admire?" He knows that value doesn't come from wishing, but from becoming. And every day through disciplined action, he builds a life that doesn't need to scream that he deserves anything. So how do you escape the trap of "I deserve more than this"? The first step is to change your words. Instead of saying, "I deserve it," "I will become the kind of man worthy of this." This shift forces you back into action and to look at what you are doing instead of drowning in illusion. Try a small exercise. Write down 3 things you believe you deserve in life. Then under each one, write, "What have I done each day to move closer to this?" If the answer is vague or if the answer is nothing, then you already have your truth. This is not about the fairness of the world. This is about your discipline and effort. Seneca once warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." When you sit and say, "I deserve," you are wasting that precious time. You are turning each day into an indictment of your stagnation. But when you stand and act, you become proof of your real worth each day. The world does not owe you recognition, love, or ease. The world only reflects exactly what you have sown through discipline and courage. A Stoic man never whines, "I deserve." He chooses to train, to build, to become. And that earns him respect, not because he demanded it, but because he truly deserves it. So next time the phrase, "I deserve more than this," drifts into your mind, pause. Instead of complaining, ask yourself, "What have I done today to prove my worth?" And if the answer is nothing, you already know the path you must take. Because strength does not lie in the words you tell yourself about entitlement. Strength lies in what you are willing to do to become a man of value. But there is another trap even more subtle. Some men don't shout, "I deserve," but they dodge responsibility with a phrase that sounds reasonable. "That's not my job." And that is the following foolish phrase we need to confront. Phrase 5, "That's not my job." Some phrases sound like healthy boundaries initially, but they are signs of retreat. One of them is, "That's not my job." How often have you heard this at the workplace, in the family, or even from your mouth? It is usually said firmly, as if the speaker is protecting his rightful interests. But if you listen more closely, you will hear behind it avoidance, shrinking responsibility, and the erosion of self-worth. At first, it seems reasonable. Who wants to be taken advantage of, to carry burdens that are not theirs? But if a man constantly avoids everything outside the narrow lines of his job description, focusing only on the bullet points assigned, he no longer lives like a leader. He exists like a machine, repeating old motions, nothing more. Take the story of Ryan, a veteran mechanic in Pittsburgh. For 30 years, he never came late, never missed a shift. To many, he was the model of diligence. But at home, Ryan was invisible. When his son needed advice about choosing a school, he said, "That's not my job. Your mother can handle it." He dodged when his wife required emotional support. "I provide for the family, that's enough. Feelings aren't my job." Slowly, his wife withdrew and his son grew distant. When the family broke apart, Ryan sat alone bitterly saying, "I did everything I was supposed to do." But that was the tragedy. He didn't do anything wrong, but never did what was truly right. He lived his whole life inside the safety of duties and lost the meaning of purpose. A Stoic never accepts living that way. To them, the boundary between duty and purpose is clear. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Your mission is to be good. Nothing can stop you from doing that." A good man never hides behind, "That's not my job." He understands that in the difficult moments when no one asks, when no one praises, it is stepping forward that proves actual value. Men often confuse setting healthy boundaries with retreating. Setting boundaries means saying no to things that violate your integrity or pull you off your path. Retreating is when you reject responsibility simply because it is inconvenient. A Stoic man knows the difference. He does not take on everything, but he does not walk away when he sees a gap that must be filled. Epictetus once reminded us, "Do not say you are only a part of the world. Remember, you are a link in destiny itself." If you think that's not my job, every time you face difficulty, you cut yourself off from the connection with the world. You become a bystander watching things fall apart without leaving a trace. Think back, how many times have you been disappointed when teammates, coworkers, or loved ones just stood by with folded arms? How often did you wish they had stepped up and said, "Let me do it"? It is in those very moments that trust and respect are built. And it is in those moments of avoidance, credibility, and value are eroded. A Stoic man understands that his presence is not just to complete tasks on a list, it is to create impact. He does not wait to be called or wait for every step to be directed. When he sees something that needs to be done, he considers it and, if possible, steps forward. That is not foolishness, that is initiative. Try a small practice. Next time you are tempted to say, "That's not my job," ask yourself, "If I do this, will it strengthen who I am?" If yes, do it, even if no one asked. It is the actions beyond duty that forge dignity. It is the small, nameless deeds that carve deep respect from others. Seneca once wrote, "Do not ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive." Because what the world needs is people who have truly come alive. This flips the issue upside down. Instead of calculating what belongs to you, ask what helps you live purposefully. Do not let petty calculations turn you into a slave of bullet points. Live as a man who steps beyond the fence, not for instant benefit, but for long-term growth. The world is not lacking men who only do what is theirs. The world is lacking men who step up when there is a gap. If you want to be trusted and respected, start living that way. Do not let "That's not my job" become the gravestone over your reputation. And as you grow accustomed to this, you will see the difference. You are no longer just a man who completes tasks. You become a man of influence at work, in family, in friendship, and in every relationship. You are no longer merely existing. You are truly living. But the journey does not stop here, because there is another phrase that sounds calm, even philosophical, but in truth it is surrender. That phrase is, "It is what it is." And that is the final wall we must break down. Phrase "It is what it is." Among self-limiting phrases, few are as dangerous as "it is what it is." These 5 words sound harmless and even philosophical, but in reality they are the background music of surrender. It is spoken when a man has stopped believing in his ability to change. It appears when he is tired and no longer wants to hold on to control. It is what it is, and it can appear in countless situations. When work stalls a man's sighs, "Well, it is what it is." When marriage grows cold, he tells himself, "That's my life." When his health deteriorates from bad habits, he repeats, "I can't help it. I've always been weak." At first, this sounds like acceptance, but in truth, it is not acceptance in the Stoic sense. It is surrender. In Stoic philosophy, acceptance means recognizing what is outside of your control so that you may remain calm while at the same time pouring your energy into what you can influence. But it is what it is different. It does not simply acknowledge reality. It strips away the will to respond. It is like seeing an open door before you, yet sitting still, convincing yourself you cannot walk through. Think of Jack, a project manager at a tech company. The company's servers once suffered a significant outage, threatening to lose an important client. When he heard the news, Jack's first response was not action, but the phrase, "It is what it is, nothing we can do." In that moment alone, he planted the seed of failure for his team. The leader's surrender spread quickly, teammates lost confidence, clients grew angry, and the company stood on the edge. Jack woke up only when a colleague reminded him of Marcus Aurelius's words, "The obstacle on the path becomes the path." He stood assigned tasks and the team turned things around within 2 days. The contract was saved, but Jack would never forget when a phrase almost destroyed his career. This is the harm of it. It is what it is. It turns obstacles into fate instead of into opportunities. It robs you of creativity, resilience, and belief in yourself. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." A Stoic never denies reality, but neither does he use reality as an excuse to stay still. He observes, then acts within the limits of what he can. That is true acceptance. In modern psychology, researchers call this kind of surrender learned helplessness. When people experience too many failures, they believe all effort is pointless. And to shield themselves from disappointment, they repeat phrases like, "It is what it is." But this repetition deepens the belief in helplessness, making them miss real opportunities for change. Face this with a small practice. Next time you are about to say, "It is what it is," stop and ask, what part of this situation is still within my control? You can't change the whole system, but you can change your attitude, reaction, and preparation. That is the Stoic spirit. No surrender illusions, but action within what you can do. Seneca once reminded, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Every time you say "it is what it is" and sit still, you waste another piece of your life. You miss the chance to be sharpened by adversity. You turn yourself into a bystander in your own story. Remember, there is a difference between calm and paralysis. Calm is when you see reality clearly and choose a wise response. Paralysis is when you lull yourself into thinking nothing is left to do. A Stoic man never chooses paralysis. He chooses awareness. From now on, replace "it is what it is" with a new phrase, "I accept reality, and I will act within what I can control." This replacement alone changes everything. It opens space for solutions. It hands you back the power of choice. And when you live with that spirit, adversity will no longer crush you. You will learn to turn every trial into an opportunity to strengthen yourself. You will no longer let a harmless phrase quietly erode your will, because the world does not need more men sitting still repeating, "It is what it is." The world needs men with the courage to say, "I will do what I can." And now that we have walked through 6 toxic phrases that weak men often repeat, it is time to step back and see the whole picture. These phrases share one thing: they are excuses to avoid change. But the Stoic path is different. It calls us to face life, to take responsibility, to act. We will combine these fragments in the conclusion and draw the most profound lesson. Looking back at the 6 phrases we have dissected, one truth becomes clear: none are harmless. They are like drops of poison, subtle but numbing another part of the spirit each day. Let's recall 1. That's just how I am, the declaration of stagnation where a man chooses to stand still instead of evolving. 2. Real men don't talk about feelings. A false armor turning fear into honor, but inside a decaying heart. 3. It's not my fault. The sweet trap of the victim where strength is handed away without knowing it. 4. I deserve more than this. The hollow slogan of arrogance demanding without planting. 5. That's not my job. The phrase that turns a man into a machine of bare minimums, rejecting the meaning of purpose. 6. It is what it is. The most dangerous lullaby, turning acceptance into surrender, killing the fire of will. When these 6 phrases are repeated repeatedly, they weave an invisible net that binds a man. He no longer advances, no longer confronts, and takes the initiative. He exists, but he no longer lives. And that is the greatest tragedy. But we have also seen that there is another path, the Stoic path, a path that does not promise ease, always leads to solid ground. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This means every phrase you utter is a mirror of the mind. If you surrender with words, you have surrendered your life. But if you wield words as weapons, you begin the work of reshaping yourself. Epictetus once taught, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you must do." That is a simple but powerful formula. Instead of saying, "That's just how I am training to improve." Instead of insisting, "It's not my fault," say, "Now it's my responsibility." Instead of sighing, "It is what it is," as, "What can I control in this situation?" Seneca added. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Those 6 phrases are 6 engines of waste. Each time you repeat them, you throw away a chance to grow a moment of discipline, a piece of life that will never return. The lesson here is not only to avoid those 6 phrases. The lesson is to stay awake to every word you speak. Words are not just sounds, they are signals to the mind. They are commands you give to your own soul. And when you speak with truth, responsibility, and discipline, you carve into yourself the shape of a strong man. So ask yourself, which of those 6 phrases have you repeated the most? Which one has silently limited you? And more importantly, what will you replace it with from today onward? Please write it down, say it out loud, turn it into the command for every action. One day others will judge you not by what you wish for, but by what you repeated. And if you want to be a man who is respected, let your words carry the weight of integrity, courage, and stoic discipline. The world does not need more men who speak much to hide their weakness. The world needs men who know how to keep silent, talk about truth when needed, and act even when no one is watching. So from today on, kill those 6 toxic phrases. Do not let them take root in your mind. Instead, let your words become the tool that sharpens your soul. Let each phrase you speak be a step closer to inner freedom. You have reached the end of this journey, which alone proves that there is a hunger to change within you. Do not let those 6 weak phrases drag you back. Stand up, train yourself, and become the man you were born to be. If this message has awakened something in you, share it with someone else so that they may be reminded. Subscribe to Sovereign Stoic because this is only the beginning. What lies ahead will be even more powerful, and I want you to be part of this journey. Finally, remember this: the weak let words become chains, but the strong turn words into weapons. Choose to be the latter.